Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar, and thank you for being here. My name is Lou Groner, and I'm Vice President of Community Relations at the Jewish CommunityFoundation of Los Angeles. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to learn more about a very special investment opportunity called JLens that can help you align your values with your actions. We'll hear momentarily from Ari Hoffnung, Managing Director of the company, who will share more. However, before we begin, I just want to acknowledge what's on all of our minds and in our hearts at this moment, and that's the critical situation in Israel today. Rest assured that my colleagues in our Center for Design Philanthropy are working very closely with our exceptional philanthropy consultant in Israel, Ofi Zisser, to monitor the current situation, understand immediate needs, and provide recommendations for funders to consider at this juncture. You'll soon be receiving an email about this and other steps we're taking to help Israel during this difficult time. And I know we all hope and pray for a very quick and very successful conclusion to this conflict. Now, onto our program. The foundation offers a number of investment opportunities for clients who have a minimum balance of $50,000 in their charitable fund. One very special option is JLens. It uses Jewish principles to power its shareholder advocacy and to vet the companies it invests in. JLens also uses these principles to guide companies in addressing issues of antisemitism and the BDS movement against Israel, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and to promote TikkunOlam. Over 30 Jewish institutions are investors in JLens, including numerous Jewish community foundations like ours, Jewish federations, day schools, synagogues, and more, amounting to more than $300 million in investments since 2015, when JLens began operating. Ari prepared an informative presentation of about a dozen or so slides to share more about the JLens story, the impact they've been making in boardrooms, and why JLens is an ideal way to increase one's investment impact. We welcome your questions during the presentation, which will be answered after Ari concludes his remarks. Please note that the foundation does not offer legal or financial advice. A little bit about Ari. Ari oversees the strategic direction of JLens and leads efforts to combat anti-Semitism and address our community's concerns in the boardroom, the workplace, and in the marketplace. So he has a pretty significant role in the organization. He's been at JLens for over 2 years and previously worked in several entrepreneurial and leadership roles in a range of industries, including governmental, financial, and pharmaceutical sectors. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. Ari, time to take it away, please.
Well, thank you so much, Lou. I really appreciate that introduction and appreciate the time that everybody took today from their busy schedules to join this webinar and to learn more about JLens. I would say that, before we get started, I feel a deep personal connection to the Jewish community of Los Angeles, which is I'm speaking to you from the Big Apple in New York City. Most days you'll find me at the ADL's headquarters on 40th and 3rd Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Today I speak to you from my basement in the Bronx in Riverdale, New York. But my mom did grow up in Los Angeles, and my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor, was a rabbi in Los Angeles. He was a very holy man for many years, worked for the Bureau of Jewish Education. And I know that your organization really over decades has really helped built the Jewish community of Los Angeles into something that's truly magnificent today. So on a personal level, it's really meaningful for me to spend a few minutes with you this afternoon and talk about Jewish values investing. So thank you for that. I should also say that my wife Annie and I have our donor advised fund at the Jewish Communal Fund of New York, which of course every Jewish Communal Fund is a different organization and a dependent organization, but we very much believe in investing in one's local Jewish community and one's community, and more broadly in Israel, of course. And I just really echo the words of Lou beforehand. These are very difficult times for the people of Israel, for the Jewish people, and I know that we all have deep personal connections to folks who live in Israel or visiting Israel or whatnot. And I know that I personally feel a bit distracted these days with the tremendous amount of news that is coming out of Israel and the risk that so many people are living under today. So let's jump into things here. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me. And I will start the presentation. So this is JLens. I am the managing director of JLens and been doing this for almost 2 years now. By way of background, I have an MBA in finance from NYU Stern School of Business. I spent the first 10 to 15 years of my career on Wall Street. Then worked in city government under Michael Bloomberg when Michael Bloomberg was mayor as the deputy controller, and then did different entrepreneurial things and hit a milestone birthday not too long ago and decided that it's time to do something really meaningful, and to be able to work full-time in the Jewish community has been a real blessing for me on both a personal and professional level. So JLens was founded by an amazing woman from California, actually, from the San Francisco area, my predecessor, Julie Hammerman, who had a Wexner Fellowship. And as part of that, she had a project where she was exploring the connection between investing, which was one of her passions, and Jewish values, which was another passion. And as the clock ticked, this project really became a full-time endeavor, and she founded a nonprofit, JLens, incorporated the organization in California as a nonprofit, and launched the separate managed account vehicle with a $5 million investment from a private foundation in San Francisco, a Jewish foundation. And over time, that has really grown. I believe we have been offered on the Los Angeles platform since 2020. We're delighted to be an option for donor advised funds in the Los Angeles Jewish community. That's very meaningful to us. In November of 2022, JLens became an affiliate of ADL. What does that mean? JLens remains its own independent 501c3 nonprofit organization. Nonetheless, we receive tremendous support and expertise from the Anti-Defamation League, an organization founded more than 100 years ago in 1913. And we really get to leverage a lot of ADL's expertise in combating hate and anti-Semitism. In 2024, late last year, we became an investment advisor registered with the SEC. And in February of this year, we launched on the New York Stock Exchange the first ever Jewish Values ETF, similar in nature to the separate managed account. Of course, with an ETF, the entry price is whatever a share costs on any given day. It's about $25 right now. But the separate managed account is really designed for institutions and for donor advised funds. And they accomplish very similar things from an advocacy perspective. Over time, what Julie started in San Francisco back in 2016 when she first offered the separate managed account vehicle, and in 2020 you guys joined, it has really flourished to include more than 30 Jewish institutions, which manage over $11 billion of assets. And today, our investment vehicles, as of the end of last month, this is a fairly updated number, have about $360 million across them. And we've really built up what we refer to as the Jewish Investor Network, which is designed to advocate for Jewish communal concerns in the corporate arena. I know that's a mouthful. We'll be talking about more of that today. And, we're certainly work with other organizations, Jewish organizations in California. And as you see from some of the logos here, beyond, so that we also work with national Jewish organizations like Hadassah, like AJC, and so on and so forth. The idea behind JLens, behind our investment vehicles, is really to pool Jewish communal assets so that we can amplify our voice. What does that mean? Think about the number of Jewish institutions, the number of individuals that have investment assets. For an institution, it might mean an endowment. For an individual, it might be a donor advised fund, or it might mean a taxable account. It means different things for different institutions, different people. But what we do is we pool those funds, and we then use something we call shareholder advocacy tools as a way to leverage those underlying assets for Jewish shareholder advocacy. So we engage with companies, right? We speak to their general counsels. We speak to board members. We speak to executives. We speak to investor relations about Jewish communal concerns. When necessary, you might find a JLens shareholder resolution on a corporate proxy statement. We do the proxy voting. So we now vote proxies for some of our clients, for some of the Jewish institutions. And last but not least, we launch public advocacy campaigns focused on specific issues. All of this is done to influence the decision-making of the largest public corporations in the United States in a way that is beneficial for the American Jewish community. Let me talk a little about our advocacy-driven investment process. How do we structure the separate managed account? How do we structure our investment vehicles? It's a simple 3-step process. Step 1, we start with the 500 largest companies, and we screen out a few companies that are not aligned with Jewish values, and we can get more into details about what that means. And I certainly acknowledge the fact that there's not always agreement on Jewish values, even within the Jewish community. But nonetheless, we have screens that we believe represent a consensus in the Jewish community. We score the companies on different Jewish values scorecards. And then based on the results of our analysis, of our research, we engage in passionate advocacy. And I should say that from a financial perspective, all of our investment vehicles are passive in nature. So don't think of us as financial wizards of sorts. Think of us as investment vehicles where you will get a large cap index-like return, similar perhaps to other large cap indices that are out there that we're all familiar with. And it's the underlying assets that we leverage for Jewish communal shareholder advocacy. Okay, in terms of our track record, so you can see that the SMA performs very similarly to the S&P 500 index, right? So basically, on the JLens SMA in your donor advised funds portfolios, if that is something that you've elected in terms of investing your DAF funds, you should expect a very similar risk and return profile to the S&P 500, at least based on performance to date. As you know, past performance is no indication or guarantee of future results. Nonetheless, I would say that the basket of securities is highly correlated with the S&P 500. Our pitch to donor advised funds, our pitch to Jewish institutions that are considering JLens as a way to invest their equity, their domestic equity, large cap allocations, is by investing Jewishly, we can together leverage your assets to combat anti-Semitism and hate, to support Israel, and to engage in TikkunOlam. And if we have the time, we'll go deeper on all of these issues, but high level from a strategic perspective, that's what we try to do with your underlying assets. So let me now, I've used the term shareholder advocacy. Let me give you some information about what we've recently been doing in the shareholder advocacy realm. So this is kind of a recent update. For those of you who may not follow the proxy process or annual shareholder meetings closely, we are at the tail end of what is referred to as the proxy season, which is in the second quarter of the calendar year. So think April through June. That's when probably about 80% of S&P 500 companies have their annual shareholder meetings. They vote on things on the board. They vote on corporate resolutions, exciting things like who will the financial auditor be. But they also vote on things that are important to shareholders, as you'll see in a few moments. So I want to take a step back just for a moment, and you're all familiar, whether it's not with this specific statistic. I think the Jewish community, whether you're in New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, or wherever you are in the United States, and for that matter, on planet Earth, recognize that unfortunately there has been a historic increase over the last decade in anti-Semitism. I should mention that ADL has an annual survey. This 2024 data point, this alarming data point in red of 9,354 incidents, certainly includes incidents from the Los Angeles Jewish community that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but is something the ADL has been collecting for 46 years. We're at a 46-year high. This is a credible data set. We have a third-party auditor of this data set. This is a data set that members of Congress use, that other NGOs use, and there's a really troubling trend here. And some of this anti-Semitism in today's environment makes its way into corporate America and onto the proxy statements of different companies, and hopefully we'll have some time to talk about that. We talked about combating anti-Semitism and hate. We talked about support for Israel, and we talked about TikkunOlam. Okay, those are, I would say, high-level consensus issues, thankfully, in the Jewish community. But how does it come into play in a financial portfolio? Okay, one of the things that we've been focused on this proxy season is engaging with Meta on the issue of anti-Semitism and hate on their online platforms, including Facebook. And if you take a look at the slide in front of you, you will see the percentage of Americans who have experienced online harassment on different platforms over the past 12 months. And you will see that there is no platform compared to all the other platforms where users have experienced more online hate than on Facebook. 61% of Americans have experienced some form of harassment on Facebook. And Jewish folks, and LGBT folks, and disabled folks for that matter, those three cohorts, according to our Center for Technology and Society at ADL, have experienced the highest levels of hate. And one of our largest holdings in the separate managed account and in our ETF investment vehicles is in Meta. So we're not only stakeholders in Meta, we are shareholders in Meta. And we believe that what Meta is allowing to happen online is not only something that is morally unjustified, we also think it's a poor business decision. And that's why we engaged so deeply with Meta. JLens filed a shareholder proposal at Meta to address the issues of anti-Semitism on hate, to really raise the profile of this issue, to make sure that Mark Zuckerberg and everybody on the board knew that they need to do a better job with anti-Semitism on hate. And I'm not going to read the resolved clause, but you can see the resolved clause. And we didn't only speak about Jews, but we also spoke about Jews, but we also spoke about other demographics of users where we have seen an unfortunate spike in hate. And I am proud to report that we have earned almost 47 support of independent shareholders on this proposal. And the independent proxy advisors, Glass Lewis and ISS, have also supported this measure, which helped support the vote on this. So we did well. I want to be clear, this is not a binding vote. This is advisory to the Meta board. But we have sent them a strong message that this is something that not only the Jewish community cares about, but some of their largest institutional investors care about, because this is something that could cause irreparable harm to their brand and to their business. This is no surprise to you, but following the horrific events of October 7th, 2023, we talked about corporate anti-Semitism, or anti-Semitism directed at corporations. And our research folks, we have a research team, they have found that over 75, yes, 75 S&P 500 companies are targeted by the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, the BDS movement. And just take a moment to look at these logos. I bet you're familiar with most, if not all, of these logos. These are companies that are being asked to boycott Israel. These are companies that are being asked no longer to do business with the state of Israel, or with Israeli companies, or in Israel itself. So whether you're a McDonald's or an Intel or an Amazon, you have heard from the BDS movement. And when we see proxy statements with hateful resolutions that essentially call on a company to stop doing business in Israel, we run campaigns against those resolutions so we could educate institutional investors on why they should oppose those resolutions. So with Meta, we run campaigns in support of resolutions, but we also at times need to play defense. And you can see we did a pretty decent job representing the assets in the JLens SMAs. I should say one thing that has been absolutely terrific since November of 2022 about us sort of being embedded in the ADL is we're able to leverage a tremendous amount of expertise. I talked about the Center for Technology and Society. We also have a Center on Extremism. We have a Center on Anti-Semitism Research led by a Stanford PhD, Dr. Williams. There's a lot of different things we have at ADL, and we leverage the expertise of our colleagues. And that's something that really helps make sure that our work is impactful and make sure that we could collaborate with top experts in the field, whether it be on online hate, whether it be on BDS, whether it be on other online on other issues of concern to the Jewish community. We are what I'd like to think is a small and mighty team. We're a team of 6, and but we're a much larger team when you take into account the entire staff of the Anti-Defamation League. And of course, the Anti-Defamation League also has a presence in the Los Angeles Jewish community. So I am going to stop take a pause here, take a breath, and turn it over to Lou and see if you have any questions that you would like to ask. I always enjoy questions, really whatever is on your mind. I encourage you to ask those questions. I will do my best to answer. If I can't answer a specific question, glad to be in touch through Lou via email, and we will try to get you an answer to those questions. So Lou, I really appreciate the forum here. I've enjoyed sharing some information about JLens, and I want to turn it back to you for any questions that you, our folks who are participating in this webinar, may have.
Great, great. Ari, thank you so much for that incredibly informative presentation. It was fascinating, yet at the same time quite sobering. But it's wonderful to know there's an investment firm like JLens that is addressing issues like these in the marketplace. By the way, you mentioned at the very end, Dr. Williams, head of ADL's Center for Anti-Semitism Research. I believe you referred to Dr. Matt Williams,
Yes, I
who,
was.
who was, as a matter of fact, coincidentally, is going to be in our office tomorrow for some meetings with our with colleagues in our Center for Design Philanthropy, and he spoke with us for us before on a panel on anti-Semitism about a year or so ago. So very impressive, terrific guy. It's great to know that you all have a resource like him and so many others from ADL. Anyhow,
Absolutely.
one question here, and I encourage everybody to send any additional questions through the Q&A tab or the chat tab. The question is, so are you all approaching with your shareholder advocacy efforts, are you all approaching just companies that you're currently invested in, or do you also approach companies where you have no investments but want them to get on the right track with these issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, prioritize companies that are in the separate managed account, are in the ETF, and that represents the top 500, approximately the top 500 companies in the United States, right? So those are your Metas, your Alphabets, your Microsofts, your Amazons, companies that we're all familiar with. In any type of advocacy operation, you need to prioritize who you engage with. There are literally, right, there's an index, a financial index called the Russell 3000, where you have mid caps and small cap companies, right? So we want to prioritize our advocacy. But if we learn of a company that is, shall we say, on the wrong track and that would benefit from engagement with us, we're glad to engage. And I'd offer this to you, Lou, and to really anybody on the webinar and beyond. If you see something going on that you would like to bring to our attention that you think merits an advocacy engagement, we're all ears. No one team, no one person can keep track of what's going on at every single company in the United States and globally for that matter, right? I mean, there are companies in the UK like Unilever that owns Ben and Jerry's that have had an interesting history with that brand, shall we say, right? So it's not even limited to the US, but if you see something that you think merits a Jewish communal engagement with a corporation, let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, will do. Very interesting. Also, question here: you spoke about examples of success that you've had in the boardroom, which is great. When at times, if there are times where your message is not as effective and doesn't result in the results we're looking for, do you all ever, like threaten to remove the investments or pull your money? Have you done that before? Or
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
something you do.
No, that is something that we occasionally do. And I would say that we see that as the final escalation tactic. That is absolutely not our preference. So we very much adhere to a shareholder philosophy of own and advocate.
Mm,
In other words, think about, Lou, and I ask everybody else to think about our engagement with Meta. Some people argue, some people in the Jewish community argue, and I understand their argument. How can a Jewish fund hold Meta? There is so much hate and anti-Semitism on that platform against Jews and against other demographic groups in the United States and beyond. Why should a Jewish investment vehicle be a shareholder in that company? And they make a powerful and passionate argument coming from a good place and an understandable place. But our perspective is more nuanced and is different. Our perspective is, if we are not a shareholder, we couldn't have filed a shareholder resolution on the ballot. If we weren't a shareholder, we wouldn't have been able to interact with top executives at Meta in the same way we do on this issue. So strategically, our preference is to own and advocate, because once you're a shareholder, at your disposal, and this is really a core competency of JLens, is the shareholder advocacy tools that we have as levers to further to address the concerns of the Jewish community. So we very much want to hold as many of the stocks in the top companies as possible. There are some exceptions, but our belief and our philosophy when it comes to shareholder advocacy is to be a shareholder in the company. Meta is going nowhere. Meta is one of the largest companies on the planet. There are over I don't know, I'm preaching to the choir here. There are over 3 billion, no, that was not a mistake, billion users daily throughout Meta's platforms, right? I mean, arguably, they influence humanity in such profound ways that in some ways are more powerful than governments. And it's important for us, we believe, for the Jewish community to be shareholders in that company so we can use all the tools at our disposal to interact with them.
Fascinating. I really like that phrase you use, own and advocate. It really resonates. And speaking of Meta, another question here, how does the 40% effectiveness that JLens got with the Meta boardroom initiative compared to other endeavors on other issues? Is that considered good? Or at what level or threshold do corporate boards start paying attention?
Yeah, so this is a technicality, and I just want to be transparent with it. We got approximately 15% if you look at the SEC filings, okay? But this is really technical. Some folks who have a background in this may get it. Others, if there's more questions, I can go into detail. Mark Zuckerberg has a special class of shares where he has disproportionate influence that way outweighs his sort of economic interest in the company. So when you just look at independent shareholders, not Mark Zuckerberg, not corporate insiders, we have 46 to 47% of the vote. From what our proxy experts are telling us, Lou, that is the #1 human rights related shareholder proposal across all companies, hundreds of companies this season. So although the folks at Meta, with the way they run their cap table, is skewed towards the insiders, when it comes to top financial institutions sending a message to the board that we're not happy about what's going on, our message has been heard loud and clear. Now, has it been accepted? No. What are we going to do? We're not going to divest from it tomorrow because of our own and advocate philosophy. JLens isn't going anywhere. The Jewish CommunityFoundation of Los Angeles is not going anywhere, and ADL is not going anywhere. All of our organizations, God willing, are going to be here for many years to come, right? You guys, I think, started in the 1950s. ADL started in 1913. JLens started in 2012. Meta is going to be here, right? It's hard to picture a tomorrow without Meta. This is a long-term game that we're playing here. It's not a game. I don't want to discount it as an inappropriate word, perhaps, but our strategy is long-term, multi-year. We will continue poking at them. We will continue to amplifying the voice. We will continue to work with institutional investors. When we engage with a company like Meta, it's not just our voice. At the end of the day, what's $300 million to Meta? It's a company that has a value over $1 trillion. But what we do, Lou, is we look at the top shareholders, top institutional shareholders of Meta. How much does BlackRock have? How much does Vanguard have? How much does JP Morgan have? How much does State Street have? And we talk to their people and we say, hey, this is a shareholder business issue here that we want to bring to your attention. We have deep expertise here. This is not only a moral issue, this is a business issue. These guys are going to cause harm to their business, and that's how we amplify our voice further, because we leverage this relatively small amount of assets to have access to the company, and then we go to institutional investors, educate them on it, and then we send a strong message to the board. So this is a multi-year campaign, and we're going to speak out until they do the right thing. We believe it is their responsibility, and it is something that is good for their business to help reduce the hate on the platform.
Yeah. Great, thank you. You mentioned Ben and Jerry's, you referenced earlier. Have you all been involved in taking any action with their board, with the Unilever board? Because they seem to be,
Yeah.
really out there when it comes to Israel.
Yeah, so Ben & Jerry's has made and continues to make unfortunate statements about Israel, demonizing Israel, delegitimizing Israel, and holding Israel to a double standard, throwing out accusations like genocide when it talks about the state of Israel. To be clear, I enjoy Ben & Jerry's ice cream just as much as the next person does. I think they have an amazing, they make amazing ice cream, and I'd like them to stick to that, Lou. I don't need their foreign policy expertise. I would say what complicates our engagement with Unilever, although ADL has historically been engaged with them, is one, it's not a US-based company, so it's in the UK where different rules prevail. So they're not in our domestic portfolio that you guys have. But also, when they brought in Ben & Jerry's, they brought it in under a special and unique corporate structure, which I am sure they regret today, basically bestowing a degree of quasi-independence on them and allowing their board in a very unusual manner to sort of pursue social justice concerns that they have. I don't think at the time they contemplated Ben & Jerry's making unfounded and allegations against the state of Israel. And from what we can tell, Unilever wants to divest from Ben & Jerry's and to really distance itself. So from our perspective, and they know this, they can't do it soon enough. And we continue to call on Ben & Jerry's to stick to ice cream and to get out of foreign policy.
Wow. Incredible. Thanks for sharing all that. And with all the work that you're doing and the connections that you all are making in the corporate world and these battles that you are undertaking, how are you finding things overall? I mean, are corporate boards becoming more receptive to the message? Are they more inclined to listen and make change to our community's benefit from what you're seeing? Or is there growing resistance, perhaps, because of other voices out there that are against Israel and so on and so forth? Is this a hopeful future from what you're doing, or is it getting even worse?
So the coin has two sides, so to speak. On one hand, I think our adversaries, broadly defined, understand that we live at a time where corporations yield a disproportionate power and influence in society, right? So, and this is something that I would argue, Lou, has really transformed itself in our own lifetimes. And allow me a brief tangent.
Sure.
In our lifetimes, the balance of power between corporations and government has skewed towards corporations. So we live at a time, and I'm sure people can think of examples, where CEOs of some companies are almost akin to heads of state, where the policies of some companies, like Meta, are arguably as important as the policies of many of the members of the United Nations. So what does the Jewish community do with that? We have a over 3,000-year track record in government relations. When I speak to Jewish groups, I often joke that Moses was the first registered lobbyist on behalf of the Jewish community, right, with the Cairo Authority. And his slogan was, "Let my people go," and his lobbying target was Pharaoh of Egypt. And he ran a great campaign, and he got most of our ancestors out of Egypt. But joking aside, the Jewish community, one of our core competencies is being in dialogue with folks in charge. So I'm sure that the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles has a government relations team, right, that works on the local, state, and federal level. And we've grown accustomed to that. And throughout our history, sometimes it's been with czars or monarchs or democratic governments or communist governments. We've always been in dialogue with people in charge, sometimes successfully and sometimes wildly unsuccessfully, as we know from our history. But in the past generation, I think we all get a sense that corporations that many of them now transcend geography. Think of Meta, the 3 billion users a day, right? Are they, yes, maybe they're domiciled from a legal perspective in Palo Alto, right? But they certainly are a global company, right? Everybody's using Facebook right now. And their policies are therefore really important, whether you're in Iran or in Tel Aviv or in Egypt or wherever you may be. So our adversaries, people who are advocating against Israel, recognize that just as well as the Jewish community recognizes it. So there's really an uptick in calling for boycotts against Israel, and we've seen that with the stat of more than 75 companies are under attack to stop doing business with Israel or in Israel. On the corporate side, however, I would say that notwithstanding the increase in anti-Semitic incidents, notwithstanding what was going on campus, you folks in Los Angeles know very well what, from UCLA and other campuses in your vicinity, what was going on and what is going on to a lesser extent today. But from corporations, we still see extraordinary positive levels of support in combating anti-Semitism and hate, in wanting to continue to do business with Israel. Why? There's tremendous innovation there, right? I mean, this is just, startup nation, right? Intel wants to be in Herzliya. Microsoft wants to be there. Amazon wants to be there. There's a tremendous amount of innovation. There's a tremendous amount of technology. And we see a lot of support, but it's really on a case-by-case basis. I would say with Meta has been very difficult on the issue of online hate and anti-Semitism. And I don't mean to continuously sort of come back to Meta, but just reflect on how influential they are on society at large, and how many of us visited one of the Meta platforms today, whether it's Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, or our kids or grandkids, or significant others, friends and family. It is one of the most influential companies on the planet.
Wow. All right. So you spoke about having 30 clients, $360 million of assets, double high, which is quite nice. And what does the future look like for you all? What are you looking at, a few years down the road here? Where do you guys hope to be?
Yeah. Look, we are a registered investment advisor with the SEC, but our primary focus is not investment fees or profitability. As any nonprofit that provides services, we're just looking to break even. So we try to come to market with the most affordable products, like the separate managed account vehicle that your foundation offers to donor advised funds, like the ETF that is available on different retail platforms for taxable accounts and other accounts. But we're huge fans of the donor advised funds. When we say there's 30-something clients, right, that doesn't take into account the fact that Los Angeles may have hundreds of clients in their donor advised fund platform who are invested in JLens. And the same goes for the Jewish Communal Fund of New York, where, my wife and I have an account. We're invested in JLens through our donor advised fund as well. But we want to connect with more Jewish organizations, with more endowments of Jewish organizations. We don't believe that there's that there's really any sort of concessions here that an endowment needs to make. When we speak to endowments and investment committees, they often say, well, we're here to maximize return so we can maximize philanthropy. We believe in that, which is why we have come to market with such affordable investment vehicles, really priced competitively. But we think that the more assets we accumulate, we'll be able to speak to companies like Meta, to companies like Alphabet, to companies like Amazon, on behalf of more and more Jewish organizations. So we're really working, and now with the help of ADL and with the help of webinars like this, and we really appreciate the opportunity here, Lou, to speak to some of the folks part of your extended family, so to speak, that this is something that will be adopted by many other Jewish organizations. But I must say that the Jewish Community Foundation of Los Angeles, you should pat yourselves on the back, and I say that seriously. You guys are an early adopter. You're an early adopter of Jewish values investing, offering that to your donor advised platforms, and you should be very proud of it. And we really value this relationship.
Great. Likewise, Ari. Thanks so much for pointing that out. And really, on behalf of the foundation and all of our clients on this webinar, I just want to thank you so much for your enlightening presentation and all the information that you shared. I learned a lot. I imagine many in our audience learned a lot as well. So if you have any further questions, please direct them to either myself or Ari on the slide you're about to see. And again, please stay tuned for our upcoming e-communication about lending support to Israel at this critical time. Am Yisrael Chai and Shalom.